Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I think those of us who have served in the military have those moments when you say, what am I doing here? Nevertheless, I think those are the moments that we're blessed with heroism and courageousness. So I want to thank you. And I think people indeed are looking to you to see what your response would be. And the fact that you responded in the way you did inspired others. So Toda Rabbah. I thought this morning I would share with you some words and some insights about who exactly the people are that are in the military. We might not know who they are. Yes, we have doctors and rabbis and lawyers, etc. But who are the young people who are the majority of the people in the armed forces? One of my tours in the Navy was at Great Lakes Naval Base, which is a boot camp. I don't think that's the ideal place to put a boot camp up in Chicago, where it's ice cold and people are marching. Nevertheless, that's where they put it. So here is the place where people arrived, and most of the people who came were 18 years old. Before I tell you what they studied or what they learned in their 2 months of training, I'd like all of us who have moved beyond 18 to think back when we were 18 years old. And I want to ask you a few questions. How childlike were we at 18? How mature were we? How did we take criticism? That was a tough one. How would we respond when people started giving us orders constantly throughout the day? And so ask yourself these questions, and I'm going to share with you what these 18-year-olds went through in 2 months, and think of if you were at that time 18, if you would have been able to handle all this. So here are a few things that you get at boot camp. Of course, you'll learn about military customs, military history, how to wear the uniform, when and how to salute. By the way, as a little aside, for those in the military, you'll appreciate this. I often thought that this notion of saluting was Talmudic in nature. What do I mean by that? Which hand do you use to salute? Well, if you're righty, the right hand. However, what do you do if that hand is injured in some way? Okay, so we go with the other hand. What do you do if you're carrying something in one hand or the next? How about if you're in uniform and you see your commanding officer in civilian clothes? Do you salute or not? Yes, you do. And the best one is, how about if you're married? And I had friends of ours who were chaplains, Methodist chaplains. He was a lieutenant commander, she was a commander. So at home, obviously, they're husband and wife. But the minute they stepped outside, what? If it so happened that he was walking past her, what did he have to do? He saluted. So all that is involved just in that little category of learning. Additionally, you're learning about weapons, chain of command, following orders. What is a lawful order? What is an unlawful order? The laws of armed conflict, like we see. Chemical, biological, and radiological training. Learning new ethical standards. When you came into the boot camp, you were taught about honor, courage, and commitment. Those were the standards. Those were the values that you were indoctrinated with. You had your picture taken and a will drawn up. I hadn't thought about a will till I entered the Navy. Marching, particularly in cold Chicago. So at the end of the 2 months of training, there's a ceremony held for family and friends who see the people they sent as children transformed into sailors. In the uniforms, the hair is cut, of course, they're marching, and every question you ask them, the response is, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. They've changed in 2 months. But make no mistake, that change is not easy, and I want everyone to understand the sacrifices that people make as they undergo this training. We arrived at Great Lakes, I remember in December, bitterly cold, and I was filling in for one of the chaplains. So whenever I came on a Thursday, Friday, we were off, and Monday morning they said, you're filling in for this chaplain. The chaplain was in the A school. The A school is where you go after basic training. So you go through the boot camp, and then the Navy puts you in a different school depending on what you're going to be. And so they told me where the office was. I had an assistant. So I showed up around 7:45 in the morning. a modest office, and out in the hallway, in the passageway, is a whole line of sailors, 12, 15 sailors lined up. So I go into the office, and I had a clerk who was assisting me, and I said, is there some special program going on that accounts for these long line of sailors in the hall? And he looked at me with a puzzled expression. He said, sir, they're here to see you. Okay, a whole line of sailors. Why were they there? Some had regrets about their experiences. Here's what they asked me. Chaplain, can I negate my agreement to serve? They had signed up for 3 years in the reserves or active duty, and they wanted to cancel their contract. By the way, what do you think the answer to that is? No, you can't do that, but we have to talk about it. Others discovered that the experience that they wasn't what they had anticipated. They had watched too much of Top Gun or whatever, and that wasn't what they had thought it was going to be. They wanted to get out. Some were told that they could join the Navy and become something. They would learn a skill. But the Navy decided that they weren't qualified to learn that skill, so now they have to learn something else, or the Army. They weren't happy. Frankly, a few had received sad news from home and wanted to return there. Don't do this, but a few parents had waited for their children to join the military before they got divorced. And so they would inform their children that this occurred because their kids were now grown up. And they could do that. And believe it or not, a few had joined the military after arguing with their parents whether they were an adult or not. And they were going to show their parents how adult they were, and they signed up. And now, 2 months later, they're in my office saying, you know, I shouldn't have done that. And there might have been another way to settle this disagreement. Can we get out? So I will tell you, that day, it took me a few hours to go through all those people in line. And that was my job for the 3 years at the Great Lakes Naval Base, dealing with those sort of problems. Nevertheless, most, if not all, made their way through. Most, if not all, dealt with these issues and proudly served their country. So why did they do this? Why did they put themselves through all of this, ending up in Iraq with your head covered? And I want to make a point emphatically. It's not about the money. Let me repeat that. It's not about the money. Do you know, by the way, you can look this up, how much today, if somebody goes in the military, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, whatever, how much a new person makes per year? 20 grand. That's it. 20,000. And you can do the math. I did it a little bit. $1,750 a month, $450 a week. That's it. So I think the people at McDonald's or Walmart or Home Depot make more than that. And they're just doing what they're doing. So why did they do it then? Why would an 18-year-old, and remember, think if we would have done that, what our parents would have said, etc. So why did they do that? Remember, Great Lakes was a boot camp, and the young people used to fly into O'Hare, get on a bus, be driven up to the base, and have an orientation, and then go to boot camp. And so one time, a group of chaplains went down to meet these young people, literally as they got off the bus. And we chatted with them, and I asked a few questions as part of these conversations. And I asked them directly, why are you here? What are your motivations? A few said that they needed the GI Bill to help fund future college studies. However, for most of them, that wasn't their primary motivation. A few spoke about their fathers and mothers who had served and felt that it was now their turn to serve their country. Others mentioned that they believed that it was their responsibility to be in the military. I must tell you, I was greatly awestruck and humbled as one after another 18-year-olds. By the way, in some cases, you could be 17 years old if your parents sign a waiver to join. In some cases, a 17-year-old, an 18-year-old, who were saying to me with great simplicity and clarity that the one reason they came in was to show their love and dedication to their country, period. To show their love and dedication to their country. I must tell you, as a starting chaplain, I'd have other people come up to me, including some rabbi friends, and say, how much are you making? What's your salary? What's your compensation? And again, you have a chart. You look at the chart. Your rank and your number of years and wherever the lines intersect, that's what you're getting. And I would say whatever it was, and they would say, well, you could earn more and do this, do that, do this, and do that. And I said, okay, but that's not what I want to do. That's not what I want to do. I want to serve. I want to be part of this. And that's what people need to understand. By the way, take a look at one of those charts. A captain, a Navy captain or a colonel that's in charge of a major aircraft carrier, or even generals and admirals, they don't make that much. They don't make that much. Yet they're part of history. They're in charge of thousands, tens of thousands of people willing to go out there and be what we call the point of the spear and be out there changing history. It's not about the money. These young people taught me something, as did all the people in uniform, that I want to share with you on this Veterans Day. The reason that people are willing to put on the uniform and have their picture taken, which you know, God forbid, might be used in some situation after, and why we signed our wills. I was 28 when I entered the Navy. I hadn't thought about a will before, but you do it because there's devotion. It's, by the way, it's bedrock, essential values. It's deep, abiding principles that you're willing to put your life on the line for, period. Period. These young people taught us they have a devotion to freedom, they have a devotion to liberty, and they have a devotion to country. And they're not just going to talk the talk, they're going to walk the walk. And they're going to put themselves in harm's way, in artillery, in bombs, whatever it is, because this is what they believe in. So on this Veterans Day, when you come across anyone in uniform, yes, it is totally appropriate. Buy them lunch. If you're at Hartsfield Jackson, or buy them a Coke, buy them something, and say thank you for your service, and even go further. Who are you? Where are you from? What brought you here? But it's certainly appropriate, number one, to understand who they are, and more significantly for all of us, why they are out there every day doing what they do. So for all the people who are willing to do that, we say, Toda Rabah, thank you with all our hearts and souls. We respect you, we admire you, and we love you. Shabbat Shalom.